Don't know if you've been following what's going on in Oregon, well, Oregon and Idaho. You've got these counties in Oregon. This has been going on for a while now. But you have these counties in Oregon that want to join Idaho, this greater Idaho movement. And there's an article about this at Fox News because Democrat Senator, let me get his name here, I'm doing this in one take today, Jeff Merkley, over the past weekend, spoke out against this campaign to move these rural eastern counties, or this part of Oregon, and have it join Idaho. So I'm just going to read you part of the article here. Moving the Idaho-Oregon border would require the approval of both state legislators as well as the U.S. Congress. Critics have argued such a scenario would never happen and therefore isn't worth the time and energy. Well, I disagree with that because the whole purpose of the United States was to get away from Great Britain. We seceded from Great Britain. Secession is the most American thing you can do. However, a resolution is making its way through the Idaho legislature that wouldn't move the Idaho-Oregon border, but rather call for formal talks between the state's legislatures about relocating the boundary line. Earlier this year, Idaho's House of Representatives passed the bill. It's unclear if the bill will eventually pass the Idaho Senate. But the chamber is, like the state's House, dominated by Republicans who are more supportive of the idea than their Democrat colleagues. Doing some one take. Proponents also note that 11 counties in eastern Oregon have voted for ballot measures to explore and consider the move. I think this is a great thing. I think it's a really good thing when you have people say, you know what, we don't like how you're governing things. We want to change. We're going to move. We're going to expand our state line or join this state or contract here in this state and become our own entity. It's like what's going on in Georgia. A lot of people aren't following that story. All these counties outside of Atlanta, the areas outside of Atlanta, want to get away from what's going on in Atlanta. But anytime you have smaller government, the more efficient things are. Now, if this is all finalized, it would bring the total to 12 counties. According to some polling, Idahoans, is that how you say it? Idahoans would welcome expanding the state boundary. In Oregon, meanwhile, polling has shown a roughly equal number of voters support and oppose the idea, with about 1/5 of the population undecided. Proponents of a greater Idaho argue the movement is about maintaining more traditional values. Where we've seen this before. And preserving a certain way of life and being properly represented by the state's lawmakers, which, believe it or not, was the argument in 1860, 1861. Who they argue impose a far-left agenda opposed by those living in more conservative eastern Oregon. And they've got a picture here showing the slogan, Move Oregon's Border. Move Oregon's border for a greater Idaho. And they've got a website. I'm not going to give that out, where you can go and find out all the information about this. And somebody's quoted saying, I have lived along the Oregon border my entire life, so have many East Oregon friends. They have been quite frustrated with the liberal I-5 Western Oregon corridor, running their state and completely ignoring their values and needs, Idaho Representative Judy Boyle, Republican, told Fox News Digital. Said this back in March. However, some of Boyle's colleagues countered that Idaho lawmakers should be focusing on the residents of their own state. Well, had you been doing that a long time ago, these rural parts of Oregon wouldn't be wanting to move to Idaho or become part of Idaho. Echoing Merkley's argument that the idea of a greater Idaho is unrealistic. Others say it's dangerous to set a precedent of responding to political disagreements by separating into like-minded communities. No, it's not. It's actually the best thing you can do, because you have less disagreements that way. Are we seeing that now? Isn't California, whatever happened to Calexit? When I lived in California, there was a big talk about separating the state of California into two states, Northern and Southern California, or possibly three states, Northern California, Central California, Southern California. Over the weekend, Merkley acknowledged that the Greater Idaho movement reflects a divide between Western and Eastern Oregon that needs to be addressed, adding that different communities live across the street. Well, I'm sure some people live practically across the street from each other. Across the state, and elected leaders should try, I'm having fun today, folks, and leaders should try to understand them. He also argued that social media and cable television news exasperate, I can't even pronounce my words today, Oregon's east-west divide, saying politics forced from both the left and right use these outlets to demonize the other. Well, this has been going on since day one. See, this has been the big argument. The big argument has been, how much government should the power have? Should people in the North be dictating what people are doing in the South? Why are we being, if you think about it, and somebody else here on YouTube has asked this question, why is it that we have all these politicians from New York and California dominating everything? Possibly from Chicago. So you get all these people from New York, Chicago, nothing against people in New York and Chicago or San Francisco. But the point is, there's a much larger population out there than these representatives from these three states. Despite criticism of a Greater Idaho, proponents of the movement believe they've gained momentum. Former Oregon House Speaker Mark Simmons, for example, recently penned an op-ed in the Idaho Statesman daily newspaper to explain why he supports a Greater Idaho, saying if they're successful, they'll be freeing rural conservative communities from progressive blue state laws. Beyond values, supporters also point to a recent analysis by the Claremont Institute that found the state line shift could benefit Idaho economically, providing an annual net benefit to Idaho's state government budget of $170 million. So this is actually more of a positive than it is a negative. But you have to take into consideration, how are you going to move this border? What are the economic factors, social factors involved? What services are you going to be able to provide to these new counties coming into Idaho from Oregon? So there's a lot, housing, jobs. So a lot of socio-economic factors that go into this decision. It's just not something you can do, on a whim, something you can do overnight. However, critics have argued Oregon's sparsely populated areas have high rates of Medicaid enrollment and could be an added expense to Idaho taxpayers. Quote, a Greater Idaho would be as big as Montana and twice as populous, with new land increasing the state's population by about 21%. So I thought I'd share this with you. This is at Fox News. Now, something else that was in here, and I accidentally skipped over this. Let me see if I can find it. They were saying something where it was like these counties make up 63% of the land mass in Oregon, if I'm not mistaken. But you can go check out this article at Fox News talking about what's going on with this Greater Idaho movement. Title of the article, Dem Senator Slams Greater Idaho Movement to Absorb Conservative Rural Counties from Liberal Oregon. This is by Aaron Kleigman. I can't even read today. But go check out this article. And I think this is a great thing. But again, you got to consider all these factors. And they're doing that now. Socioeconomic factors. Are you going to bring in enough jobs? Are there going to be enough resources? What's going to be the impact of shifting the state line, this Oregon state line, and moving it to Idaho? So if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. You can also follow me at Instagram, #JasonComposes, because I write music in my spare time. Or you can go to Twitter, Cultural Confederacy, at Cultural Confed what on Twitter. This is the Cultural Confederacy saying peace out. Stay safe, everybody. God bless this thing called the United States. And you know how we do it here. This is where the past crashes with the present. I'll catch you next time.